representing Canada's financial capital, the fourth largest city in North America, and the most amazing city in the world. This is Toronto Business Journal.
Hello, everyone. We're here at another great, amazing edition of Toronto Business Journal, and we have a especially fabulous, amazing guest today, Elana Freeland, who's going to be talking to us about some important issues going on in our time today. In terms of what's in politics, environment, all kinds of issues like that. So take it away, Santosh.
Elana Freeland is a writer, ghostwriter, teacher, and lecturer who researches and writes on deep state issues like geoengineering, MKUltra, ritual abuse, targeting, and invasive electromagnetic weapons. She is best known for her geoengineering trilogy, Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth, Feral House, June 2014. Under an ionized sky, from chemtrails to space fence lockdown, Feral House, February 2018, and now geoengineered transhumanism. How the environment has been weaponized by chemicals, electromagnetism, and nanotechnology for synthetic biology, released in October 2021. Under an ionized sky has been translated into Serbian and is recommended at a technical university in Serbia, Nikola Tesla's home nation to date. It is the only book available to the public about how Tesla technology has been weaponized on a planetary scale. Elana came of age in the eye of the 60s maelstrom. Her four-book series, Sub Rosa America, A Deep State History, exposes the hidden history of America since President John F. Kennedy's televised as assassination. An 80-page bibliography of some of what she read in order to write the series can be found at elanafreeland.com. Freeland's undergraduate degree was in creative writing with a second major in biology. Her Master of Arts degree from St. John's College in Santa Fe, New Mexico, concentrated on historiography, and her thesis was awarded honors. Elana's website is elanafreeland.com, and she posts daily at her Facebook site EMF Planetary Engineering, plus gab.com, groups, Geoengineered Transhumanism with Elana Freeland. Welcome to the show, Ms. Freeland. How are you today?
Thank you. Very good job on reading that bio.
Fantastic. It was an amazing bio. That's a credit to your extremely well-versed knowledge of a critical issue going on in our time, global warming and climate change. And one question just to open up our sort of discussion today. One thing which I'm sensing is that there's sort of four groups I sense in terms of global warming and climate change. And I just wanted to sort of, I just wanted to get your critical insight based upon my sort of understanding of my outline of the four groups, and then we'll get into your important books, which provides insight in terms of what's going on with global warming and climate change. So the four sort of groups, basically what I'm seeing is like there's different sort of plateaus of consciousness going on there with respect to global warming and climate change, and I'll just read what I have right here. The one plateau is global warming and climate change doesn't exist. It's a complete myth. That's one sort of group I seem to glean out there. Plateau two, so to speak, is climate change exists, but is a product of totally natural cycles. There's a third plateau, which is basically lumps together a lot of mainstream so-called environmental groups out there. Climate change exists, but is the product of CO2 greenhouse gases that is being perpetrated by greedy oligarchs whose motives are to secure commercial profit and power. And the answer to all our woes are so-called renewable energy like wind power, which you made a very sort of interesting insight in terms of what wind power actually is in terms of, some of the issues we can kind of talk on later in the show. And plateau 4 is global warming and climate change is being intentionally orchestrated by agents of a clandestine biotech, political, military, industrial complex, whose aims are to perpetuate transhumanism through nanotechnology and other means. So those are sort of the four sort of groups which I've outlined. There's a fifth group, but I didn't want to get into that until we kind of get your thoughts on, my outline of the four groups.
Good. Do you want me to make my choice?
Yeah. Well, I know what your choice are, but what is going on with these different? Did I make a sort of a fair outline in terms of the different groups out there? And what my goal of the show is, is to push, help to elevate human consciousness. Hopefully, those people in the first three plateaus will move into appreciating what the fourth plateau is, and will start to voraciously read your books up to the more recent book on geoengineered transhumanism. So I just want to get your insight on what is going on with this sort of these sort of enforced narratives of these other three groups, and how can we sort of elevate human consciousness so that we can get away from this sort of this disinformation which is taking place by what, in my view, are sort of the controlled opposition group of environmentalists, which keep us locked down in this idea that is just like CO2. So I wanted to get your insights on that.
Yeah, you are so right about that. To me, the purpose behind those first three groups, which really were spawned well before 2015, when they had the big meeting in New York and everybody signed off on sending money regarding their CO2 levels, and a whole big takeover began. That is now, as you can see, continuing in from another angle. I mean, this is a long story, this takeover. I would say it's about 100 years old, since the League of Nations failed back in the end of World War I. It's the same players, it's their sons, their daughters, their grandsons, their granddaughters, all these family lineages that are dedicated to world governance, as they call it. Another name for that would be fascism, particularly now, given the role of technology. But the interesting part about those three stories, and I'm sure you noticed this, take the first one. A lot of people went for the first one because, there's no such thing. It's just kind of made up. Well, there is climate change, and there is warming. There's no question about that. Yeah. The question is, what is the origin of that? Is it carbons? Well, no, of course it's not carbons. Carbons are part of the life cycle. I don't know why they made that one up. It's very bizarre, except that now in the atmosphere, which is completely ionized, and that's what I want to get to, geoengineering, the real term that we need to use for this stuff is geoengineering. That's what we're facing. It's not climate change. It's not global warming. Those have become major cover stories, but they have, just like every good cover story, it has a lot of truth in it, but it's sort of twisted so that you never see the military-industrial intelligence complex's role in running the atmosphere and why and what's behind it. I mean, there have been just outrageous lies at points, but mostly, wouldn't you agree that it's pretty much a deafening silence on geoengineering, other than now and then somebody will come out and say something like, well, we're going to have to spray sulfur, it's unfortunate, and there may be some health fallout from it, but we have to do it because, that's climate change is real, and climate change is causing all of these extreme weather events that are all around the world, and the tinderbox status of California and Colorado, where these incredible fires are ignited, that firemen, the first thing they say is, we have never experienced anything as hot as these fires. And so, there's just little clues here and there that maybe you should dig a little deeper into this than by the cover story that it's climate change and it's due to carbons, and we're trying to rectify it with flying these solar radiation management jets and laying out this sulfur or laying out whatever. There are now and then just non sequiturs, just anomalies that really don't fit the narrative. Just as with every narrative, like the one we're undergoing now regarding the inoculations, which truthfully is connected to what I'm bringing today, having to do with what's really coming down from those stratospheric jets, what's really behind this program of geoengineering, because it is about much more than ameliorating climate change. In fact, it's not about ameliorating anything. It's about dumping masses of chemicals, masses of nanoparticles, zapping them with electromagnetism so as to create a very different Earth, a very different nature, and a very different humanity. I mean, that's really what's behind this.
Yeah. One question I want to ask you about, Ms. Freeland, in terms of us hopefully shaking the narrative with the group number 3, is that I think when I was watching one of your interviews, there's a lot of environmentalists say, oh, we have to go to wind power. But you were saying that, talking about, I believe it was yourself, because I watched so many interviews, that wind power is in fact nothing grows underneath the windmill. It causes a lot of pollution. I know the blades aren't recyclable. That's not really a good way to get energy, and it causes a lot of problems. So I think you were talking about wind power in one of your interviews.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I cover that extensively in the second book, where I'm spelling out the formation of what Lockheed Martin calls the space fence. And the space fence originally started back under the SDI program, the Strategic Defense Initiative, back in the 80s under Reagan, Bush, and Cheney. That program had to do with a sort of string of pearls, is what it's been referred to, but it was anything but pearls, of these radar installations across the mid to southern part of the United States from coast to coast that was really there as a missile defense program. But was it really about that? Because they threw the lid down on that at the end of Reagan's administration and into the 90s when Clinton took over, and it sort of disappeared. And when things disappear on that scale of a military nature, it's gone black. Doesn't mean that, oh, they don't need that anymore. They've ended that. No, it means it goes black. And that's what happened with the SDI Star Wars program, we called it, because remember, the Star Wars movies came out just then. Gee, imagine that. It must have been just an accident that happened just then. It's like when you watch the military-industrial intelligence complex that Eisenhower warned us of too late, you learn their ways, because they have certain ways they do things. And one of the things that they do is to pre-program the public with some sort of BS fictional approach of heroes and Darth Vader enemies. And so we were prepped for the SDI program a long time ago. Then it went black. Then it came back once the HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project up in Gakona, Alaska, was completed, and the phased array antennas over, I don't know how many acres, I can't remember right now, were then used to zap and target the ionosphere, which begins about 40 miles above us and continues up for a couple hundred miles. And the ionosphere was key to ionizing our atmosphere, i.e. weaponizing our atmosphere for a variety of purposes. We were moving out of the missile era And we were moving into the directed energy weapons era. And in order to do that, they had to have a wireless atmosphere that was popping with electricity, popping with battery-ready ions. And in order to get that kind of quantity of ions, they had to go to the ionosphere and pump it, hit it with energy from the phased array antennas, and pull those ions down into our atmosphere so that, you know, what you heard about 10, I don't know, maybe more years ago, every summer you'd hear people say things like, wow, the heat in this summer, the heat feels like a microwave oven. And, you know, there was another clue that we were experiencing heat, which was not of nature, not natural. It was a military microwave heat that they were cranking up and testing, experimenting with it. They were using it in weather operations. You know, I mean, go back to 2003 or so, right after 9/11, when everything just clamped down big time. Let me tell you, I was there. And what you get is tornadoes, hurricanes, storms on a tremendous scale, floods, ice, polar ice coming further and further south in the winter. So a lot of weather events they blamed on climate change. Oh, that's climate change. Yeah, that was climate change. No, yes, it was being changed, but it was being changed by the geoengineers who work for the military-industrial intelligence complex. And that's the way it's been all along. So that when I talked about the wind farms, now that's a subtle one, because what I did is I went through in that book and looked at every single technology that's used for space fence control. And your question must be, well, who's it controlling? Is it just controlling military types of operations, or is it really a control system that has to do with human society? And of course it does. And the wind farms, as I said, yeah, nothing grows there. No animal. You won't find any animals there. No birds fly into the wind farms unless they're stupid or a wind is carrying them in there. No, they were calibrated along with the radar installations and the cell towers and everything you can possibly think of that's electromagnetic. They were all calibrated to work together so that things could be pulsed with frequency. And that's the key to control over human society, military operations, everything. The weather is, you've got to be able to control the pulsing of frequencies. Then you can run things, you can control them, absolutely. And that's what's going on now with the geoengineering in the Department of the Weather. Now, the weather is only the very first operation that it's running. There are 7 operations that the geoengineering is running. And beyond that I just said, where everything had to be pulsed together, the other things would be weather engineering. Under that comes chemical electromagnetic engineering. Under that comes planetary geophysical engineering. Under that comes directed energy weapons operations. And then under that, surveillance and neural manipulation, that's mind control operations. And then under that is what I just spent this whole book on. Pretty much I've spent the whole book on all this, but primarily on nanotechnology, digital synthetic biology, and transhumanism. That's another operational level. And then finally, the last one is the simplest of all, which is cloaking or obscuring or detecting exotic propulsion craft hiding in the cloud cover that these stratospheric jets and what they're spewing out of their supplementary systems produce as a cirrus cloud cover that everybody thinks is like the old cirrus cloud cover, which isn't like the old cirrus cloud cover at all. It's actually a very sophisticated plasma cloud cover that exotic propulsion craft, and those are ours. I'm not attributing them to Alpha Centauri or off planet. They're ours. At least the ones I know about are ours. And then plasma life forms, which are being created as I speak in the ionized atmosphere. Because once you have an ionized atmosphere, plasma operations become much easier. You can pump up some plasma here and there for this or that, and that's what they're doing. A lot of what's going on in our atmosphere is devoted to these other operations, these 6 other operations.
One observation I could make when I heard your your insight in terms of wind farms is that when I look at a wind farm, every time I pass one, it looks creepy. I have a creepy energy about it. Like, what is that? It's like I'm creeped out. So you're sort of maybe explaining the creepiness that these wind farms are actually a part of a clandestine weather modification project that's designed to appear as if it's just some benign catching of renewable energy.
Well, yes, but let's not limit it to weather engineering. I didn't say that. No, okay. It's about pulsing frequency, yes, to control the weather. That has to be true. But these other operations I just named are very much about this ability to pulse frequency. Take the neural operations or surveillance. I mean, imagine that you have a space fence system where human society is sandwiched between the stratosphere, where you've got various operations going on, and you've been able to dump a mass of nanotechnology that you can now use from the ground up in around the Earth in this ring around the equator now that they talk about. This is not Elana making this up. We have a ring now, very much like Saturn's, around the middle of the planet, which is composed of electromagnetic nanotechnology and chemicals and all sorts of things that has been purposely built. That's not just garbage that they sort of dumped out of the jets and didn't make it down here. But that's the layer above us of the space fence. Then down here on the ground, we've got all these installations, NEXRADs, cell tower or microwave towers, radar installations, laser installations. I mean, we're just steeped in electromagnetism down here. Meanwhile, that Schumann well or resonant chamber between the stratosphere and the Earth is loaded with nanotechnology that has been purposely dumped from above that we're breathing. It's going into us. It's in our lungs. It's in our blood. It's in our brain. Because it's nano-sized, which is a nano is 1/1000th of a meter. Very, it's submicron. These little guys, these little bots, these robots that are in touch with Command Central, maybe in Colorado Springs, maybe at Fort Detrick, Maryland, I don't know where. They can just slip right through that blood-brain barrier. And then you end up with aluminum oxide nanoparticles in your brain, and you get Alzheimer's when you're in your 40s. Or you're a child, and you're just born, and it was in the placenta that you were using, and then you're born, and now you're breathing aluminum oxide nanoparticles, and you end up with what is that disease children get where they don't have the the awareness that they should have at their age.
It's not autism, it's something else.
Autism.
No, it's autism. It's
Autism.
Oh, that's
okay.
what's
So
causing
at
it.
one end of life, just the aluminum alone, and this
Wow.
they make it sound like, oh well, the aluminum is an adjuvant in vaccinations, and that's unfortunate, but we have to have it there. No, we have a lot more aluminum in us because of what's being dumped from above. And those, at one end of the spectrum, you have the autism, the child. At the other end, you've got premature aging going on with the nervous system shutting down in the Alzheimer people. So in other words, we're in the space fence Schumann well here, and we're having to breathe everything they're doing up there that eventually makes its way down here. And that's the serious nature of this. And the reason I decided, that's it, I'm going to write about this. This is bad news. And that was, 13 years ago or whenever I did the first book. There weren't that many people working on it. But I chanced, you know how life is. Life leads you to the people that you need if you're on a mission. And boy, True. I've been on a mission. I was led to meet the one scientist who was doing excellent, obsessive work on what was coming down in the wake of these jets that were up there in the stratosphere. That's the scientist Clifford Carnicom. I met him at a breakfast in Santa Fe when I was living in New Mexico, and subsequent to that, we spent a lot of time together because he was on that trail that I had been on without knowing it. I was following the chemtrail thing, which of course must be a conspiracy theory. That wonderful term that the CIA came up with in the wake of John Kennedy's assassination on television. The CIA gave us that conspiracy theorist and tinfoil hat, etc. So I was already following the chemical trails, the chemtrails, and I was also following HAARP, that high frequency active auroral research project up in Alaska. I didn't know they had to do with each other. That's how ignorant I was at that time. I didn't know that, because nobody's telling you. You're not reading it in the newspaper or hearing it on the news. You're having to take little bits and pieces you're finding on the internet, and we hadn't had the internet that long at that point. Remember that. You're finding all these bits and pieces and going, wait a minute, this is like a puzzle. This kind of fits here and this kind of fits there, and I wonder how these go together. That's the kind of research we had to do. It wasn't any more like the old days when you could go to a library and read 5 books on the thing and then, add your little piece to the pile. No, there was nothing available beyond the internet on this. And so that's kind of where I found myself back in the early 2000s. Clifford had been working on this stuff since the 90s, the mid-90s. And he was struggling to, he thought, talk about naive, he thought that, I'm finding these things and I'll report them to the CDC and the EPA and the FDA, and they'll be right on it, and they'll find out this is bad, and they'll stop it. That's where we were at. We were that naive, and he would send stuff off to them, experiments he'd done, ask them to replicate it, so that he'd know the science was correct, as he had been trained. He used to work for the Department of Defense, but had quit that years before. So did they respond? No, they didn't respond at all. But he did find that they were hitting his website because he had a bit of software that could tell who was coming to his website, how many people and who they were, what their own IEPs were, and finding, lo and behold, all the alphabet agencies in Washington, D.C. and in Colorado they're all hitting his site 164 a day sometimes. But are they responding to him? Are they saying, "Whoa, good job. Yeah, oh, well, we're interested in that. We'll examine." No, nothing. Zero, zip, silence for 20 years. 20 years silence. And he's meanwhile pursuing it and becoming more and more upset and concerned because he's seeing, for one thing, very early on, by doing some atmospheric testing that he knew how to do, the atmosphere is totally different than it was 10, 15 years before. We're not breathing the same air that we used to. And it's not just pollution. This is a pollution of a whole other order. This is an intentional pollution. So we're on our way to transhumanism, and we want the human being to be the host of various biologicals, various nanotechnologies that we will always electromagnetically still be in touch with, so that we can reprogram that nanotechnology while it's in their bodies and in their brains, all silent, all secret. And this was the classified situation of geoengineering. You know, people don't understand. They think it's all out in the open. No, it's not out. It's all classified. And the only reason I was able to find as much as I did is I was working 15-hour days to find stuff and then figure out how they fit together. I had to do it. And that's where Clifford and I sort of formed an alliance. He's the trained scientist. I'm not. I'm the writer. I'm the researcher. I know how to do research. And we have been friends ever since.
Well, we can definitely all be grateful for your pioneering research on this, Ms. Freeland, in terms of geoengineered transhumanism as the apex of the trilogy of your that you sort of pursued. So we can be grateful of that. With that said, in reading your book, one sort of term that I got a little bit of excited about, because I sort of talked about this with Santos many times, I'm sure he's going to want to comment as well, is that you had mentioned CERN in your book, and that which leads to my fourth plateau, which I kind of put myself in this, and I wanted to sort of get your sort of thoughts on that. Well, and you talk about sort of the sort of anti-human agenda. You've said in interviews before, and you've talked about those sort of areas. So the plateau 5, which I kind of consider myself, so to speak, within sort of this group, is global warming and climate change is the product of some kind of lower dimensional entities that have taken human form, which are seeking to assimilate humanity into their artificial intelligence matrix. And one reason which I sort of mentioned that is that you had a very sort of insightful interview with Ramona D. And you had sort of talked about very briefly with Ramona D about the body snatchers. The body, which sort of is in the 50s, it was the body snatchers, which was morphed in the late 70s to the invasion of the alien body snatchers. One of the scenes in the Body Snatchers movie was, these entities that took human form and would look over sort of dead humans unemotional, with no emotion. And then talking about the vaccine, there's been one particular video that comes to mind, it was on BitChute, of somebody apparently just dying from the vax injection. And these people just sort of look with no emotion at this dead person. And we're going hysterical with no emotion. I'm seeing more repeated sort of a video footage of people with no emotion when these sort of people that you see on the video talking about, their agenda, what they plan to do, this non-emotional people, which seem to have a completely different sort of aesthetic. I mean, they don't seem to treasure the blue skies and treasure beauty and love and all that stuff. So could it be possible, if we sort of stretch our mind a little bit, that this sort of non-human agenda may be part of an actual effort through people who look like us but aren't us, that are seeking to electrify, change the earth for their own species. So I just want to get your insights on that.
Right. No, thanks for that. I understand what you're saying. It's also known in all my interviews that I don't import aliens. I don't import them. I don't import grays. I don't import reptilians. That's not my pay grade. I'm here and my mission is to clarify the human situation. And then I leave all that to people. Now, I have, just to be clear, it isn't that I haven't experienced something. I have experienced an entity, but it was from this planet. It was a life form from this planet that Trevor Constable, and if you haven't read it, you really should. The Trevor Constable has photographs, infrared photographs of these entities that have been probably living in the atmosphere and in the earth and in the sea of this planet for millions of years, long before we ever got here. Trevor Constable's book is called The Cosmic Pulse of Life. And it's in there that he also goes through Wilhelm Reich, Rudolf Steiner, what was her first name? The woman named Dyer, D-Y-E-R, she did radionics. He goes through a few giants, real giants, and talks about how they looked at planet Earth and what are the life forms that are here that are possibly not with biological bodies. They have, in my opinion, they have plasma bodies. And I've spent a lot of time, there's a whole chapter in this book about plasma. Okay, so with that said, I know what you're referring to when I was talking to Romola D. I was referring to the fact, and I know it's a fact, that if you abandon your humanity, and that would be your best qualities, like what you were naming, Raymond, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You were naming of seeing the blue sky and the trees and the beautiful planet, and you don't have any of that anymore. You have been so AI indwelled, and believe me, the AI realm, it's not coming in the future. It's here. We're in it now. We're all plugged into it right now, all of us, because of the nanotechnology in our bodies and brains. You don't know yet how it works. It's the biggest revolution going on right now, and that's why it's so quiet. It's deafeningly quiet around anything having to do with nanotech. They didn't even want to, Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson and the rest of them didn't even want to admit that they had nanotechnology in the serums that they're pumping into people's bodies. They just wanted to sort of gloss over that. Why? Because this is huge. This is why AI has us all to some degree. And I'll talk about consciousness, because if there's any way to save ourselves from this nanotech and the AI master that it serves, it's going to be our consciousness, our human consciousness. But let's go back to my idea. All right. So if people like Klaus Schwab or Harari, who serves him, is some sort of brown-nosing transhumanist, if these so-called people who have a head, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a torso, if they abandon their humanity, they will leave a vacuum in their soul, or in their, whatever you want to call it, spirit, inside them, their consciousness. There will be a vacuum. And there's a law, which everybody knows in science. Nature abhors a vacuum.
Vacuum, yeah.
And so what will fill that vacuum? Well, it will be an entity on this plane of existence. We've got plenty. If you remember the electromagnetic spectrum, it's very narrow, our visual range, right? It's so tiny.
Yes.
And down here, we've got all the way to gamma rays. Down here, we've got all the way to microwaves and radio waves. We can't see any of that. Only our instruments can see those things that we have now. So the fact that there are entities all around us, like I'm sitting in a room here, I assume there's just tons of entities around me.
Yeah. Spirits,
and
demons.
I am the human being here, and therefore here's where my Rudolf Steiner training comes in. I've been a student of Rudolf Steiner for 45 years. Is that I am a higher hierarchy than these entities, in that I am a human being, a real human being, because I take care of my humanity. I feed my human parts. I take care of my soul. I take care of my temple that my soul lives in, my body. I mean, I am dedicated to being a real human being. That doesn't mean I'm going to be perfect. That means I'm involved in the process of evolving into more and more and more of my humanity, and keeping it and holding it and defending it. So yes, there will be entities in these people. Now, I've met a few of these people before the vax thing happened, but you are right about the vaxxed people. There is something going on with at least some of them.
Yes.
I'm not around that many, but Rudolf Steiner said 100 years ago, I know you've heard this because various doctors are quoting him. 100 years ago, almost exactly, he said, there will come a time when doctors will create a vaccine that when you take it, when you have that shot, you will no longer think of spiritual or soul things. You will be done with that. That will be child play to you. That'll be nothing. And we're seeing that happening right now. I think that at least some of these batches of the serum are definitely that vaccine that Rudolf Steiner forewarned us of as coming. Now, I never vaccinated my children, and I am opposed to vaccinations across the board. Always have been, always will be, because I don't know what black magic the guys controlling those needles are into. I don't know what their scene is. I know that many of them lie. I haven't been to a doctor, a Western doctor at least, since I was 13, and I'm 74 now.
Wow.
I used Chinese medicine. I studied Chinese medicine when I was in my 20s. I thought I was going to be a Chinese medicine doctor, but my life took me in a different direction. So I use yin yang all the time, which is basically acid alkaline, in order to figure out what I should be eating, how I should be doing my sleep, how I should be, my rhythms, etc. So that is essential to staying human, is having a medicine, having a self-medicine, a self-healing that is human scale, not all the fancy technology. I mean, great for the fancy technology if you're in a terrible automobile accident on the freeway.
Yeah.
And you go to a Western hospital and they've got all the fancy stuff and they've got the drugs, and they'll keep you alive until you can sort yourself out and come back. But for health, for living daily life, they don't know anything. And they're not trained in those terrible AMA, the American Medical Association medical schools. It's a big contraption for profit. And, they love sickness. They want you to be sick so that you come to get this, that, and the other. So to me, remaining human has not just to do with meditating and praying and thinking positive thoughts and, taking care of people around you. It also has to do with a knowledge of the technology, so you can decide the scale of technology that you want around you in your life and that you would want for a medical treatment too. That's kind of how I think. And in a way, now it sounds so radical, but there was a time when we were all doing home remedies and we were all on a human scale of fixing and sharing ideas and doing this and that. We weren't, have you, 49 shots for a child under 3 years old for vaccination? What? It's like it's obvious that we're being put to sleep in some way, that we have no common sense anymore. That we would go, wait a minute, 49 shots. I mean, I think it's actually more than that. That's kind of just a number I pulled out of my hat. But children, these are new human beings to the planet, at least this time, and we're pounding them with all these chemicals and putting things in their bodies. We don't even know what's in there. What is wrong with us? We have got to wake up, and it's going to be hard because we're living in an AI realm now, and there are plenty of entities just waiting for us to check out, maybe smoke a little too much pot, maybe take some drugs that we think are going to give us enlightenment, maybe have a few drinks with some friends. We're checking out.
A lot of distractions.
We've got to become responsible.
Yeah.
These entities are just waiting for an opportunity to move into a human being and take their light.
Mm-hmm.
And is there any way to bring them back though? Like if suppose somebody took the vax and they've changed their personality, is there a way to bring them back? Or
well, I think that we're looking at that now. I hear lots of ideas, you can imagine. I mean, I just got back from a book tour of a month. In which, by the way, I was targeted. Let me be very clear.
Oh,
This was
gang stalking.
Was no, it was way beyond gang stalking. It was electromagnetic weapons, and so I was greatly weakened and had to cancel 2 of my venues. But during the talks, there would be people coming up to me in the Q&A and asking me, well, if I've had one shot, what can I do? Well, especially my talk was about the graphene oxide, which is very, very serious. And by the way, graphene oxide is not just in the inoculations. It's coming down from the sky. They're using it in the operations going on in geoengineering for a variety of purposes, because graphene oxide is like the holy grail to these guys. It can do so many things. So, all right. So these people would say, if I had one shot of the graphene, what do you think I could do? Well, I don't really know, but I know I hear rumors of things that might work, and we need to pay attention to those rumors, and certain people can try it out and let us know what happens, because all the people who've been vaxxed now are definitely experimental. I think we already know that. At least we'd better know it. I mean, we're talking, what, a few billion people? A few billion people.
Yeah.
And so let's keep our fear down, and let's see what works. And you try this and you try that, and then we all write into the, some place where we share what we've said and we hear what others have to say. I mean, that's all that's left to us when the mainstream media is completely controlled. Yes. We can't go, we can't have them helping us. They're not going to help us. They're going to lie to us. So that's kind of where we're at. And that's why I mentioned to you, Sonny, that about the fact that Tony Pantalaresco lives in Ottawa.
Yes,
and
yes.
Tony Pantalaresco is very much a herbalist who is helping, I would say, thousands of people, because he had Morgellons. Are you guys familiar with the term Morgellons?
No.
I heard you mention in the video as some sort of some coalescing life form of some kind that replicates.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just take a moment for that. Okay. Very important, because the Morgellons that Clifford was studying back in the 90s, people would, the reason we know that people had Morgellons as a condition is some of the people would get these sores on their bodies. And it sort of looked like staph. It had like a perimeter to it. But then out of the middle of it, besides the suppuration and weird gooky stuff coming out, would be these wires. And if the person got near like my computer or a toaster oven or their cell phone, the wires would just go crazy, just crazy. They loved it. And that's when Clifford, what he was collecting in the precipitation coming down from the sky was these fibers, filaments. And at first, he didn't know that they were in the body, but finally he wondered if he had breathed them in. So he did this red wine test. That's how it started. He'd take a swig of red wine after he'd cleaned his mouth really well and slosh it around for a while and then spit it into a clean dish. And it was in there that he saw the filaments moving. They had motility. They were moving. And so then he began to have other people like me do the red wine test, collecting samples and trying them all to see does everybody have it? Yeah, we're all breathing it. We all have the Morgellons in us. And the filaments were, maybe a couple of centimeters at the most, maybe 1 centimeter, a little more. But he had to break into it. The actual fiber it was in, the fiber wasn't the whole thing. There were other organs inside it. And in order to break into it, he didn't have that kind of equipment that could deal with that, like a laser or something. He didn't have that kind of fancy, expensive equipment. He used chemical abreaction agents. And he had all the different filaments in different petri dishes. And so he'd try this agent with this one and this agent with this one. I mean, very painstaking and laborious. But eventually he was able to break into what turned out to be a polymer filament, a casing around some organs that when he tested them, it was obvious they'd been geoengineered, they'd been bioengineered. They were not natural. This was a bioengineered thing that went by the name of Morgellons. So what you don't know to ask, but you would find very interesting, so I'll tell you, is that the term Morgellons was a very old 18th century term for a skin ailment that people were getting back long time, a few hundred years ago. So who named this Morgellons to make people think it was a skin problem? Well, that would be the CIA, I would assume. That's what they're good at. They know exactly how to mislead. And that's what they spend a lot of time on. Well, that's just my guess. So it's called Morgellons. It's a bad term because it doesn't describe it at all. It's not a skin ailment. It is true that the skin will start to try to get it out because the skin is connected to the liver. And the liver is probably working very hard to defend the body from these bioengineered bits and pieces that Clifford Carnicom was discovering. So he spent 20 years basically with his microscopes, now and then getting more and more power behind the microscope so he could see the tinier and tinier and tinier down almost to the nanotech, but not quite. He could never afford that kind of electron microscope. It's, he did his best, and he found a lot, and he found these organs that were actually fruiting bodies. That what would happen is you'd inhale this polymer fiber, and once it was inside the body where it was warm, it would start to unpack what it had inside it, as it had been bioengineered to do. And then those parts would come out and it would start self-replicating. And what it really was doing, and this will sound very familiar to those who are aware of what's really going on with this inoculation, it would eventually become what Elon Musk sort of gave us a heads up about, a neural mesh. It became like a neural network of long strands that all sort of self-replicated, and then they join, and self-replicated, and they join. It's like all the way through the body. And that's what Morgellons was. That was the first step, in my opinion, and that's what I talk about in this third book. I lay it out very, very clearly, that was the beginning of what has now ended in this hydrogel, graphene oxide, luciferase, carbon nanotube inoculation that's being put into people, along with a genetic, a gene drive that's going to change their genetics to a transhuman. And they are going to have all of this hardware in them that now a lot of people are finding. Particularly, I recommend to you guys, you want to go and look at La Quinta Columna out of Spain. It's a group of researchers who are just brilliant beyond belief. As fast as their videos come up of what they're explaining, how this technology and the inoculations works, they're being taken down here in the States. Boom, 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 they're gone. And then you have to put it all up again, and then it's gone. And then, yeah, these are the guys, La Quinta Columna, and that means the fifth column. They're the ones that are showing that there's hardware on a very tiny scale, a nanoscale hardware, computer hardware, in the inoculations. They are turning us into machines with that inoculation. However, lest I don't know if I'm not going to inquire as to your vaccine status. I don't want to know. But for those who aren't vaccinated, who aren't taking in this inoculation or this series of inoculations, we're still breathing from the sky, because guess what? Who controls the chemicals coming down on us from the sky and the nanotech? Big pharma, big pharma. And who controls the inoculations? Big pharma. These are the Satan of our day, is pharma. And it was even the Satan of the day when it was just IG Farben during World War II, and it was running all of Hitler's operations. I mean, it's the same families. You see how it is for us. Yeah. So
well, I don't want to have anything to do with what I call in code mark of the beast. So that's me.
Yeah.
I speak for
exactly.
I don't want to have anything to do with that. But I just wanted to step back in terms of a very sort of a comment you made, which I share as well, when you're talking about us taking care of humanity and not taking care of humanity. Because the First Nations kind of talk about different positive and negative spirits, that by not taking care of our humanity, we allow ourselves to be occupied by these negative entities that are in our environment. And if we are, as a society, produce a sort of a society of which is destructive, not caring, built upon war, greed, are we sort of not producing an environment where people get in that energy kind of state frequency and they become occupied? So we are, as ourselves, as humans, we are collectively making a choice for these entities that coextensively live with us to occupy us and then see our own faith and assimilate us in their sort of negative lower dimensional consciousness.
Yeah, no, you're on it. You're on it. The one thing I would take issue with is that maybe I'm being a little kinder, but not really. I understand this technology quite well. And I don't think people are able to make choices anymore. I think they're being pulsed with frequencies and being run. And so when they're all going along with it, there is the temptation to blame, oh, look how weak humanity is. I mean, it can't even make the right choices. There's a tendency to blame these people who are little more than lemmings or sheep. And they have been plugged into the TV since they were born. They are now plugged into did I say to you I don't own an iPhone? It's a weapon system. I don't own that. The only weapon system I own is my beloved computer. And it is a weapon system. I'm very aware of that. But let me read you this. This is how I feel, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. Okay. In Robert Kennedy Jr.'s interview with T.J. Coles, Ph.D., he begins with a clip of transhumanist Yuval Harari of the World Economic Forum, who talks about surveillance, quote, under the skin, then goes on to mention how life on Earth will be dominated by, quote, entities that are not organic, the potential of AI being much, much bigger than any historical revolution. This being a biological revolution. End of and then I say this. The transhumanist objective has always included preparing a transhumanist planet for a transhumanist species connected to artificial intelligence systems. In this way, planet Earth has been weaponized against natural human beings who thus far have only had to deal with sycophantic governments, churches, and corporations attempting to control every facet of their lives. Now, however, we must study the various levels of the latest quiet bid for absolute power, that of chemicals, electromagnetics, and nanotechnology, all virtually invisible, all requiring a new way of thinking by those of us committed to remaining human. That's how I look at it.
Definitely very insightful. Do you have a comment to make about that, Santosh? Quote?
No, I mean, like everything I wanted to know about what's really happening is been covered so far. So yeah, like getting back to the weather geoengineering thing. So they can literally just like create storms and things like that at pure will, or is it like literally at the push of a button?
Yes, push of a button. And that's
incredible.
been for about 20 years.
Wow.
Am I saying all the weather is engineered? Yes, I am.
All of it.
The weather, to my knowledge, is geoengineered. Now, there is new weather, whatever that means, that comes up in the South Pacific. And that arises out of the life force of the Earth. Because the weather is part of its etheric body, its etheric function. This is a living planet. And so that weather arises and immediately is grabbed by the geoengineers and then moved up the California coast north, bypassing California, leaving it in a drought condition so that they can run the fires that they use for changing, for planetary change and real estate deals. Yes, that's happening. They move it up past Oregon, up to my state, Washington State, which I call the cauldron. And about 200 miles off the coast, they will begin to create the weather systems they need back east, whether in Canada or in the United States, it doesn't really matter. Even for Europe, they can begin creating it there. And they'll attach it to the jet stream, which is parked over Vancouver Island, and send it east. And they'll use, how will they do it? They'll use frequencies. They'll use, obviously, electromagnetics and chemicals in order to produce and move the weather where they want it. All tornadoes, all hurricanes, all storms, everything is engineered now.
They should be held accountable for like all the damages they've caused.
Oh, absolutely, they should. Will they?
Goodness.
I doubt it. Will they? Yeah.
One question I want to ask Ms. Freeland, and again, this is going in a sort of a plane of really awareness, and myself and Shantas, we sometimes talk about this, but I don't talk about it to too many people because it gets into really strange territory. But one thing which we know about, because you talk about MK Ultra in your book, I already mentioned, you briefly mentioned about CERN. We also know about, historically speaking, the so-called Philadelphia experiment, when he had experiments in time. One phenomenon which I experienced, I know a lot of people on Facebook experience, but in 2013 January, many of us, and this is on Facebook, experienced what has been colloquially called the Mandela effect. And my personal experience of that is, again, a part of this information context is, it's just a bunch of people forgetting stuff. The experience of myself and many other people on Facebook and other groups is that, at 2013, we began to notice that our family members, friends, started becoming completely different. Their recollection of events were completely different. A lot of times I've seen, stuff on YouTube talking about people who use one particular gentleman on YouTube talking about his family being sort of Christian and being very spiritually evolved. And then after this effect occurred, he became, all his parents were concerned about were driving for money and seemed to be spiritually, their sense of soul seemed to be kind of completely destroyed or eviscerated. And so there's a lot of people experience what, apparent time shifts where, and again, you might have heard about this before, you may just think it's weird. Hopefully we might inspire another book about this weird phenomena if you're not too familiar about it. But I just was wondering.
Oh, no, I'm familiar with Mandela.
Yeah.
I'm familiar.
Yeah. So you're familiar with that sort of people experiencing changes in time and stuff like that?
Let's look at it from what I've said.
Yeah.
Okay, so time is the fourth dimension. That's all it is. Time is the fourth dimension. It's not mystical. It can be manipulated. It can be manipulated. And if you have humans involved in it, then you can also manipulate with pulse frequency their memories.
Mm-hmm.
You can also do that. In an entire geographic area? Yes, an entire geographic area. Not difficult. In fact, now the scientists, I have a couple of clips that are really extremely surprising in a way, that scientists at West Point in the military West Point would be so blatant about how they can control memories over large regions. And so it's, if we go from MK Ultra, which was, let's remember that it was more in a clinical setting, a hospital setting or a military hospital, and it would entail machines, it would entail electrodes, it would entail drugs, it would entail hypnosis, it would entail trauma. That all would go on with individuals. That was individuals. Now, they can pulse frequencies to thousands of people at once. And you all end up with gobbledygook memories, for one thing. And to me, when I heard about the Mandela effect, that was, of course, my first thought, because, again, I'm familiar with how the technology can be used over large swaths of territory. And that was before the satellites went up. That was before all those little satellites went up. Now, can you imagine it? Can you imagine the power, the control? So to me, it's no more mystical than that, the Mandela effect. And can you make it so that it's in movies? Like now you're looking at, like the names of, I think one of the things was the name of TV shows, right? Like Yogi Bear or something, I can't remember. But there was the name of some show. Well, what would prevent being able to put that up on the internet? I mean, you see what I mean? My first thought is manipulation through the technology, not anything coming from a psychic level that can't be explained by technology. That's how my head works.
Mm-hmm. Because some people have attributed the Mandela effect to CERN, a sort of
yes, through Nikola Tesla's
and CERN could have been involved.
Yeah.
CERN could very much involve, because in my chapter in the last book, I have a chapter called The Temple of CERN. Very important chapter. I spell it out. CERN is a temple of the elites, and all sorts of rituals go on there. All sorts of satanic rituals. We're talking black magic of particle accelerators.
Yes.
And particle accelerators are very good at manipulating the magnetosphere. I mean, I think it was CERN. I can't prove it, but I think it was CERN that flatlined our magnetosphere. Our magnetosphere went flat as a pancake for 3 hours a few years ago, and very little news came out about it. And then they pumped it up again. A lot of experiments are going on, and certainly, to me, it would have made the Mandela experiment made total sense that they would want to mess with people's memories, and then put a little bit of the Berenstein Bears name was different, and this was different, and that was different. Put that out there for the people to just kind of make people go, oh, what's going on? What's going on? I mean, because they like that stuff. That's how their bent, twisted hearts work. But yeah, it could have been from CERN. It could have been from Brookhaven National Labs, because they have a particle accelerator there, and it could have been from the one in Texas. Particle accelerators are very good at shifting time, the fourth dimension.
There's
problem.
one in China too, I think. They're building them all around the world, I believe.
And the Brookhaven one is now building a bigger one than CERN. Yeah.
Interesting.
So I think what we need to, and I'm not trying to make it sound like, I don't want you to think that I'm saying, oh, these guys are really brilliant and they're really black magicians and they can do anything. No, but they have something on their side that we don't have. They have national security on their side.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We can't get any straight story from them on any of this. So we're in a sort of perennial guessing game, and that's why I stick with the evidence, why I stick with the technology, because that I can do a 2 + 2 = 4. Whereas if we're bringing in aliens or other things, I don't know what to do there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, when you start talking, I mean, I wasn't meant to necessarily talk about aliens, but just sort of that non-human component and what's going on, and sort of try to explain it. Because what definitely my concern in terms of when we sort of began our sort of this interview discussion is the extent to which, how can we sort of evolve past whatever is preventing us from being able to take our humanity, work together as humans, and deal with this sort of destructive geoengineered transhumanism that you talk about in your book, because it's extremely well detailed. I urge everybody to check it out and get it.
Yeah.
But then when you read the book, and people say, oh, well, what can we do? It's just too much to handle. So definitely, it's good to also inspire people to say, okay, after you read Miss Freeland's book, this is what we can do to elevate human consciousness in which this book becomes a tool for moving forward in a direction that we can save our humanity rather than going towards this sort of dystopia.
Nihilism.
Oh, go ahead, Sonny.
Oh, no. Some people might be heading towards more nihilism. Oh, there's nothing we can do.
I know.
Everything's compromised. So
I know, but everything is a choice
exactly.
to the degree that, okay, so we're all in an AI system, and the AI is affecting us everywhere we turn. But in the end, we still have to make choices. We still have to decide. Okay, it's like my book. Yeah, it's not an easy read. I highly recommend people read it in groups so that they can, and read aloud and just go slow and maybe pick out a section that you're interested in. You don't have to start at one end and go to the very end. You can read different sections and start really loving learning. I think it's something Americans tend to, and in Canada too, I think, love being entertained, because then you can go into alpha wave, and you just let it happen to you. But when you have to read, which is why most people don't read, right? And when your question should be, why am I writing books in an era when people don't read and they can't retain what they read? They can't retain it from one page to the next. I'm writing these books for the future, actually. All three of them are for 20 years down the road, 50 years down the road, whatever, when they go, what the hell happened back then? And there have to be some books, and unbelievably, these are the only books. I mean, there are a couple good books on just geoengineering the weather, but nothing that takes it as far as I do. Nothing. So I'm just trying to leave a record of what is partially discovered, and then it has to go on. Some people need to. Some of the scientists. I have about a dozen scientists who follow me, who have all left the fold, and are interested in, because I'm out there on the edge. Are interested in what I say, but not because everything I say is true, but because I'm heading in the direction we all need to be going in, and that I'm hoping there will be people who will write more about these things, so that we can know what the technology is that we have to face. If we don't know that, then fear will overtake us, and the entities will have their way. And of course, most people don't even believe in the entities, right? I mean, they're like way out in left field. They've been conditioned, programmed, and unless we realize how conditioned and programmed we have been, we can't undo the programming so that we can understand what is in front of our faces, but we can't see it because we're programmed. So, it is a huge challenge, and that's why I'm out here beating the drums. Does it do any good? Well, yeah, I know it does, but it's not in quantities of people. It's in individuals.
Yeah.
And individuals is how humanity has gone forward anyway. If you look at history, I'm a big historian. If you look at history, it's always just a few individuals who lead everybody else forward. That's the way it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, a small group of people, relatively speaking, who start to inspire others of the need to move beyond their simple, regular prism, and to sort of move. And that's how sort of hopefully we can continue to elevate society through that sort of inspiration that your books provide in terms of for the future. But hopefully people will start to, seize the importance of it long before the future. We need people, reading geoengineered transhumanism, and hopefully some people who are watching the show will start to seize the moment, because right now we're being misdirected by the so-called environmental movement. And there's a lot of earnest people out there who want to save the environment. They want to do the right thing.
But it's misdirected.
Misdirected, you know?
Yeah.
Misdirection.
Let's support wind energy. Oh, it's just CO2. Let's do something about that. But if they know that, oh, no, we're being misdirected, let's look at Elana Freeland's book. That's what's really going on. This is what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just as long as you're mentioning it, Raymond, there are two versions. You can buy the one at Evil Amazon. That's the black and white version. Or you can buy for $15 more the color version, which I have being printed by a whole other outfit where it was cheaper. You can order that from the Rudolf Steiner bookstore in Seattle, Washington. And that's really, I highly recommend the color version. It has 60 illustrations. In some cases, it makes or breaks the picture. So people, and to think about forming groups and just doing what we call in the Steiner land, we call study groups, where you're all studying, but you at least have other people to bounce it off of, and you can travel at a pace that's not onerous. Most people will do all their practical stuff and then at bedtime start reading. Well, that's not going to work with this book. I can tell you.
So we'll definitely make sure we put the links to all the editions of your book below the video. But before we leave, I definitely want to touch on two critical, important comments or concerns, from reading your book and listening to your previous interviews. When you had mentioned about, first of all, the geoengineered fires, and it's skipping one house and going to one house, and et cetera, it could be like some teenage. Is that sort of tell us that there's some entity or whoever it is with a God complex that wants people to think that?
No, much easier than that. It's nanotech. It's the nanos. It's
but
the
why are they skipping one house? Why are they just eliminating all the houses? Why are they skipping one and getting the other?
Because they're masters who are telling them which houses to burn and which not for the real estate deals that they're involved in. Are this way and then sending them that way. And the best, I have a video I show in my PowerPoint where you can see it happening. And at first you think it's embers. You think the wind is blowing embers along the highways and into neighborhoods, and that the embers are crawling up the walls of these homes that they then start igniting. No, those are nanotech. The nanos are terrific for that. We don't just have them in our bodies. They're very useful for the fires, and they're using them. Oh yeah, the Colorado fire recently, and then remember that the fires that had to do with these places where food distribution was happening.
Yeah, I want to ask you about a food distribution center.
I haven't had time to study it. I need to study the footage on those to make sure that it was, but that's the exact way they're going to use it. They have got it down now, and because where do they get the nanotech? Are they dropping it from the sky in big bunches? No, it's in the earth. The first 6 inches of soil is compacted nanobots, nanotechnology that has fallen from the sky for 2 decades and has become pounded down into the soil, and it can all be resurrected with electromagnetics. Imagine that.
Wow.
So it's like geoengineered scarcity. You want less food, a more unstable planet so they can control towards their New World Order agenda.
Right. Yeah. Geoengineering is the elite's handmaiden. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So are there any sort of thoughts you had in terms of about your book, Geoengineered Transhumanism, or the other books that you've had that, you might not have had a chance to talk about, which is an important point that you want to impress for people who want to read your book, and sort of perspectives out there as they, for people who really want to make a difference? Any thoughts you have?
Well, I have some pretty amazing appendices in this book wherein I'm looking at some things that normally a writer of a book like this wouldn't go into. For example, the role of Satanism in the American military,
Mm-hmm.
For example, a way of looking at patents, the patent office, and who really controls the patents in the United States. I mean, there's some addendums that I've added that I wanted people to know so that they have as comprehensive a picture of the challenge before us as they possibly can. I'm not known for hand-holding, as you might imagine.
Yeah.
I'm a soldier on the front lines. I'm an officer to a degree because I relish this war. This is a spiritual war, and I love the good, the true, and the beautiful. And I serve the good. I serve humanity. So I want others to join me, not for their personal lives, not because they, they didn't like science in high school. Do I care? I don't care at all. I don't care how you feel about science. You're born in a technological era. Get busy. Start learning about what is all around you and is now going to try to control all of humanity. So let's get on it. It's an exciting war. We're going to learn a lot of new things. We're going to meet some amazing people. I find it to be absolutely tailor-made for me. I'm here. I'm in the right place at the right time.
One little caveat, a little question I want to ask, which sometimes confused me and may confuse a lot of people, is this Satanism. Now, I understand Satan to be definitely evil, devil, demonic. I sort of sometimes equate it to what I call the fallen angels. And I've also noticed that there seems to be, in the last few years, more people, youth, who seem to be embracing Satanism in terms of their, the satanic pentagrams and all this sort of stuff that seems to be infiltrating the culture through music. But what is this Satanism for people who are sort of vaguely familiar as bad and evil? And so can you kind of give us a sort of an additional insight for people who are kind of not sure how to define it?
Well, Satanism, simply put, is a religion. And most people think of it as sort of a Halloween ha. Believe me, it's not funny. If you ever have met a satanic ritual abuse survivor what they've been through, you know that this is a very serious religion that depends upon sacrifice and blood and bodily fluids and lies, deception. Everything in a way that a so-called Christian or a good person, a good humanist would say, I never do those things. That is exactly what a Satanist will do and will be praised for it. So it's a very different religion, and it has to be taken seriously. I don't understand other than people are being pulsed with frequencies. And when you mentioned youth, and the how it's infiltrating the music, don't forget, they are also being pulsed. And every generation of youth are in danger. Every generation. Yes. Because if you want to control tomorrow, you hit the youth today. And so they are all being pulsed with the frequency for the dark side. For me, I'm very aware of the existence of evil. If there are people who actually think evil does not exist, I don't know. Have they been raised under a rock or something, or they don't know how to perceive what they're seeing? I don't know the answer to that. But I wanted to mention Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino in the U.S. Army and his role in leading the Army to Satanism, which is doing very well in the American military now. I'm very sad to say.
Disturbing. So on that note, we definitely urge people who want to get some more insight in how sort of Satanism is overtaking the military specifically, and perhaps the whole military-industrial complex, to check out Ms. Freeland's book, Geoengineering Transhumanism, get some more insight. And if you're truly interested in trying to move our sort of away from the destruction that we as humans are contemplating and moving into as a result of this sort of a cult control of our society. I urge you to check out Ms. Freeland's book and her other sort of books, a part of her trilogy, and to, start to come together as a group and move towards a new, rejuvenated approach to the environment and our relationship to the environment as a caring human being. So thank you very much.
And our relationship to our minds, because it isn't just the environment they're controlling our minds through technology.
Definitely. For myself as an individual, I always think the importance of mind, body, and spirit, and our soul as interconnecting us as human beings and to the planet, and the importance of being able to maintain a sort of that's being irrevocable part of our identity. And if we lose that, we lose our sense of humanity. And if we lose our sense of humanity, this is the kind of dystopia that we're sort of pushing, that we're sort of leaping towards. So we're sort of digging our own grave right now if we don't start to seize the moment right now and to arrest the type of perilous course that we're heading towards.
Very good. Very well said.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. And check out Ms. Freeland's books below this video and check them out. I urge you to get all of our books so that you know the whole context of what's going on. And thank you once again, Ms. Freeland, for joining us. And thanks, Dan Josh, for your work and technical side as well.